In this episode, I speak to my friend. Well, we were friends until we started this process of recording, and I put her through hell. I put her through hell, and I'm sorry, Natalie. But yeah, I speak to my friend. I speak to a relationship recovery coach and star of season 1 of the ITV show My Mum, Your Dad, Natalie Russell. How are you today? Are we still friends?
Just about. I tried to get all zen before the session and then it's just completely thrown me. And with my menopausal brain, it doesn't take much as it is. So thanks for that.
Well, all I can do is apologise and hope that over time you'll forgive me. Maybe.
No, you're all good. You're all good.
Other than me disrupting you like that, how's your day been? How's your day been today?
Do you know what? I took some real time this morning. I don't do it for myself enough, but I just took some time out and I went out in nature and I went for a little walk along the river and just needed, when you just need to ground yourself a little bit. So yeah, I felt grounded.
Well, I love the way you felt grounded. I felt grounded. So just what we'll do is we'll cancel this recording. We'll let you go off for half an hour and come back. Wow.
No, but I'm looking in a positive way that actually, had I not done that, then this might have thrown me off way more. So.
Well, I like the fact that you are a true entrepreneur because you didn't quit. You just kept going. You tried to download about 4 different browsers and then you decided to use your phone. And tell people about your professional setup you have going on right now.
It is honestly, I've got my tripod stacked on about 3 different photo album books on top of my computer. It is just not, there's no professionalism going on here at all.
I loved the notion. You're like, I wish I could take a picture, but I can't because my phone is stacked on loads of books. It's like, wow, I've really got you, haven't I? Like, really properly got you. But for those that might not have come across you yet, do you want to introduce yourself and let people know a bit about yourself? Yeah, that's the way I want to say it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always weird, isn't it, this question? Like I was thinking about it earlier when I saw that you were going to ask it. Say a little bit about who you are, Natalie. And I'm like, who am I? I'm just this huge ball of eclectic, eclectiveness, should I say. But I guess, yeah, like you said, I'm a relationship recovery and self-esteem coach. And I've been doing that for about 5 years, but I've worked in the field of human behaviour and mentoring and mental health and addictions and domestic abuse for the past 20 years, teenagers, hard to reach teenagers. So I've got an extensive history in working in the field, but I also have an extremely colourful journey myself, which I have spoken about a fair bit. So it's, long story short, lots of trauma, went off the rails, ended up in prison and abusing substances, turned my life around when I was pregnant at 22, moved to Bournemouth, started life by myself, but then that led to quite a few other toxic relationships and breakdowns and all the trauma that comes with that and being left to raise 2 boys by myself. So I've been on the hugest healing journey myself for about 22 years, or since my son was born. So yeah, it's been one hell of a journey. But yeah, my heart and passion is for having, I want to use my pain for purpose, right? And I try and do that in my own little corner of the world. And yeah, last summer I also ended up on a dating show on ITV. So
Yeah, just
throw
a little
that
thing
into the mix.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start with everything you just said. I've never actually heard you summarize it like that. It actually sounds like you're joking a little bit. It's just like, wow, you can't make that up. You might have a book in you, right?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. But it's like the process of writing it, it takes a lot. And I've written half a book, but the styles of writing, I'm not a writer, right? So, but the styles of writing, it's like all my different personalities that exist within me have written it at different points. So there's no flow through. So yeah, I guess in time, maybe, yeah, it's something that I will definitely do. It will be an interesting book for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get into bits and bobs that you're happy talking about, I'm sure. But I mean, let's start at the top. Let's start with the TV show, because I know that a lot of people most likely will know you from that, and
Hmm.
there will be the burning question of like, what happened with Paul? You were together in the show, and then you
Yeah.
wasn't. What happened?
Yeah. Do you know what? It's been a real process going through this journey, with it being in the public eye. And I guess when I've navigated the breakups of relationships before, like I've just had my mates that I talk to, and you do your processing through, and when people ask what happened, you're not as, I guess, maybe as careful as about what you say and how you say it. So navigating this in the public eye has been really quite, I mean, I'm talking in the public eye like I'm some A-lister celebrity, but it has been a way more public than it would ever have been.
Absolutely.
And I've had to be really, I think, very careful. I am someone who does care about other people's feelings and how they're perceived. And always when there's a breakup or something doesn't work out, there's my perception and there's the other person's perception. And I could give an overview of what I believe went down, and the other person might have a completely different point of view. So Paul might have a very different point of view, and then it can get very messy when you start to go into the nitty gritty. So some of that I've had to keep quite private, but on a whole, it boils down to I have learned really what I need. I know who I am. I've gone to the depths of myself and explored the depths of myself. And so who I've become because of that journey, like that's not for everybody, right? It's not where everybody else is at, and it might not even be where they ever want to be at. I have this thing. I know who I am, I know what I need, and I know what makes me thrive in a relationship, and I know that what will bring out the worst in me. And sometimes when you realize that things really don't align, sticking around is actually just will cause more harm to the other person and yourself. So yeah, it's learning when to walk away. And that's one thing I feel very proud about myself, because that's the first time in my life that I've ever done that in a really decent, respectful way. And I haven't stuck around hoping that someone could meet me where I'm at. So
That's a
that's it.
very humble and very gracious answer.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. No,
Thank you.
it's true. Everybody comes into our life for different reasons. And I think that what people never fully acknowledge in the moment is that every relationship has a beginning and an end. Every single one.
Hmm. Hmm.
Every single one. And I think that you're absolutely right. One of the most dangerous things you can do from a relationship perspective is stay in a relationship when it's done. Knowing when
Well,
it's
I've
knowing when
got a
it's
degree
over.
in it. I've got a degree in it.
So,
So,
so so we must be at lecturer level now. Like, come
right.
on.
Well, this is it's funny because I use the analogy of like when you've learned this much, learned as much as I have in regards to relationships. It's like I've learned to speak fluent Japanese, and I don't want to be like trying to force someone to want to learn Japanese or be able to speak. I want to work with just the studious A-star students or who are lecturers themselves, and like, do you know what I mean? So I just
People
think
that
it's
done the
different.
work.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
not everyone in this world wants to, needs to, desires to, and
Yep.
that's so fully on them. But when you are someone who has done it, and that's who you are at your core now, then yeah, trying to get someone else. And it's not that I need someone deeply to do the work. I think there are some people that actually don't have huge amounts of extensive work to do, unlike me. Um, uh, but I think that the more self-aware people are and the more willing they are to go on that journey, that just aligns with me more. So
And that's it, isn't it? It's the willingness to learn. It's the, like even my own relationship with my wife, the people we were when we first met were totally different people. And we had a time not so long ago where we had to check in with each other and just make sure that everything was all good, because we were both going in different directions, and that's very easy to panic in that space. But actually, when you check in with each other and you realize that it's okay to change, and actually a lot of the time you don't have a lot of choice with them changes, life decides it for you in some ways, and that's okay, it's healthy. But if you don't do that check-in and you keep trying to maintain like everything's okay, that rug that you keep stuffing stuff under, before you know it, you're tripping on it every day and there's problems. So I really respect that answer, and I will leave it there, because otherwise I don't think there's much more to explore. I'm going to go with it didn't work out.
It was not the one.
No, understood. But I mean, from the show entirely, I mean, you had an incredible experience on there. It was genuinely a lot of fun to watch you have so much fun and to be yourself and just to be unapologetically you. And I loved that. And
Thank you.
What do you think was like one of the greatest learnings for you for being on a show like that and to suddenly be thrust into the public eye? There must have been a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely been one hell of a journey. I think one thing that I've definitely learned from it is all the healing that I've done has been worth it, because I'm definitely able to apply everything that I've learned. It's not I've just learned it and I talk about it. I can do it in practice. I can be completely myself and authentic, even though it's scary at times. I can be vulnerable and tell a lot of people about who I am and my backstory and not feel any shame with that. I know when to walk away when something definitely isn't right. And so it's like, okay, it's like this stuff does work. It works, which is a beautiful thing. But it's definitely nothing can prepare you for, it's definitely a massive roller coaster. Because obviously everybody sees the glitz, the glamour, all of that stuff. Oh, well, I don't know whether it looks glitz and glamour to everybody else, but the journey afterwards has been like, it's been an interesting thing. It's been like self-growth on steroids, and has almost, well, no, it definitely has. It's revealed. It's revealed some areas that still need some work.
There always will be. There always will be.
Yeah, but in a really deep way. And I don't know whether I was quite expecting that. I think you can't help but have hopes, expectations, etc. So I've definitely had to go through a bit of a grief cycle. Obviously, meeting someone and thinking, after being on your own for 6.5 years, 7 years, and having hope attached to that, and then having to walk away from that and deal with the disappointment of that, and I think you can't help as a human by going on something like that, seeing that it all, like, it blew up in a way, in some ways, and then it goes very quiet, and adjusting to that and what you thought, oh my gosh, this might mean this and this might lead to this, and then you're left with a different reality. So there's been definitely some processing that's gone through with that. It's been one hell of a journey.
Yeah, I mean, there's something you brought up there that was really two things, actually. The first is that it's only in those very difficult, challenging moments, then ones that, lots of people will be forgiven for, like, avoiding, if I'm honest, that you realize that the work that you had done was worth it. Now, that is a powerful thing to say, because I think that it's understandable that people avoid those what are obviously hard moments, like difficult conversations, difficult decisions to make, moments where you feel very exposed, so you avoid it. All of those things are very easy to avoid, but it's only in them moments can you sit back and say, I've learned a lot, or I've got more to learn. Either way, that's the information you need, isn't it?
100%. 100%.
So I think that's a really great point that you make there. And then the other part of it is, and I'm really, like, appreciative of you sharing that, that, yeah, when you go on a show like that, it's the first season. It did massively blow up. I mean, for goodness sake, it had Davina on it, you know, so it was
That's
always
good.
gonna. But like that silence, you know, everyone wants to talk to you. Everybody wants to hear your perspective and what it was like, and that, and all of the different things you and your son. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, you know, there's a silence. And when I say silence, it's not complete silence, I'm sure, but it's a silence compared to what it was, you know.
Absolutely, and that comes with so much stuff, especially because of some of the core issues stuff. So that kind of it can trigger some of that. I also had to go through a journey with I worked for an organisation, local authority, and because of this blowing up, um, it was made, yeah, it was very difficult. And basically, I had to walk away from the job, which I'd worked for 12 years.
Hmm.
So, and how that was navigated and handled, there was real grief that came with that. And so, yeah, it's definitely been, and that silence. And, but I always know, as much as I hate it and I like really wrestle with it, I get some of my deepest knowings of myself and the deepest levels of growth from that pain. I'm like, I am like that. You know, that meme where it's the kid screaming and going, like, I'm done with learning. I'm done. No more. I'm
Uh,
done. But it seems like life just keeps on
Dude,
crawling.
I can't tell you how many times I've looked up and gone, really? Really? Again? I thought we had done this. I thought we were friends. What's happening? Like, why are you doing this to me? I don't understand. Like,
Absolutely.
it's crazy. But I mean, thank you for sharing all that. You know, I wouldn't have been forgiven by listeners for not asking about that. But I know that you're way more than that. And, you know, that was an experience you had and you got a lot from it, good and bad by the sound of it. And
Mhm.
but you are a relationship coach. You help people recover from relationship coaching. So, you know, what is a relationship recovery coach so that people can understand?
So I specifically help individuals who've been in unhealthy relationships or have played out unhealthy relationship patterns, may have attachment issues with their parents, caregivers growing up, trauma in early years that has had an impact on ultimately the relationship with yourself, right? Because
Yeah,
from that everything else flows, which is why I say self-esteem and relationship recovery. But it's a journey and a half, and it's a very tough one to do by yourself. And there is so much information that I have learned and studied and researched for the past, I'd say 6 7 years, when I really started to try and get deep down into understanding why I kept on playing patterns out, especially in relationships. And there's so much information I learned. I thought, I wish I had known this sooner. It's not, my life is where it's at, and I've had the experiences that I've had, and I wouldn't take them away for anything. I have two incredible kids from it, and they've become who they are because of our experiences too, and they're amazing. But if I'm totally honest, there are some things I do wish could have been massively different.
kind of perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
That and had I had the information that I found out later on in life, earlier, I may have made different decisions,
of
and
course.
that could have led to, you know, not so many negative impacts on my life, but that repeated cycles of trauma. Because ultimately, my boys have had a very stable, secure mum to a degree, but trauma, even if they aren't witnessing it, or unhealthy relationship, even though they don't see the actual levels of unhealthiness displayed, they deal with the fallout and the emotional fallout. And that's not something I ever wanted for my children. When I started to learn and arm myself with this knowledge, that completely transformed how I felt about myself, how I viewed myself, and how I chose in relationships and who I allowed into my life and having boundaries and all of that stuff, I was like, I need to arm other people with this information, because if I can help someone navigate that and not go on to repeat patterns, then I'm doing my bit.
Yeah, and you got to somehow, like much like I resonate with that, you know, these things happen to me so I can pass them on to someone else. Well, thank God there's a reason, because otherwise it's a difficult one. No, you're absolutely right, you know, and I think there's a lot of, you know, you talked about attachment theory just a moment ago. Are you able to sort of talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's quite key to what you're talking about in the sense of that, you know, where we form our attachments when we're younger.
Absolutely. So if we have secure attachment, it means that our emotional needs, physical needs, all our needs were met by our caregivers, whether that generally most people with secure attachment come from, they have their mother, their father, who were able to be present, who were able to hold space for their emotions, who weren't navigating their own trauma, who had I guess emotional intelligence to a certain degree. Were able to do the things that foster healthy attachment, respond to a child's needs when they needed them in an appropriate way, have appropriate boundaries and stick to them. There's so many things that create secure attachment. So if you have all of that, then you tend to grow up and be a secure adult, which means that you're secure in yourself. I heard this woman say this thing the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so true. She said she grew up in such a secure environment and she was given such kind, gentle, loving, nurturing responses from her parents that the internal dialogue that she has is kind, loving, nurturing. She doesn't have the critical inner dialogue. And I was like, wow, what that must be like to live with having that voice inside of your head from day dot, because it changes all of the choices that you make and how you see yourself in the world and what you'll allow and what you won't. So if you don't have those secure attachments, then you form other attachments, so anxious, avoidant, or the one that's the anxious and avoidant together.
Yeah.
So there's not necessarily one set rule that if you don't have this, then you're going to get this attachment style.
It's very complicated, isn't it?
It's so complex. Very complex. It's so complex. Yeah, and you can swing from one to the other as well. So, sorry,
I rarely meet the secure adult. Rarely. And actually, when I do meet them, I find actually that they're unequipped for any sort of intensity in some way. So when them relationships break down and someone's being challenging, they're immediately labeled a narcissist, when it's actually, sometimes it can be the deficit in that person that they just not had that practice. Because let's face it, the only way we learn a lot of the time is through exposure, is through having those moments, that watching mum and dad have navigate a difficult argument or a difficult situation. I remember thinking to myself a little while back, you know, my wife and I, when we were sort of young parents, say that, young parents, is that the right way of saying it? Don't know. But when our kids were young, that's the way to say it, yeah. And we were having an argument, and Caroline said to our children, oh, you know, we wasn't arguing. And I said later on, I said, we mustn't do that. Because actually what they're doing is they're looking and they're seeing, and their senses and their intuitions are telling them that you are having an argument. And actually by telling them that can sometimes build that sort of lack of self-trust. You know, what do you mean? I'm sure you were arguing. It looked like you were arguing, or maybe I was wrong, you know, and then they learn that they can't trust their own intuition. And actually, I think it's a good thing to watch people argue. It happens. We have disagreements. 100%. Sometimes they get heated, but it's how we navigate that. That's important. And I think that's what you were touching on, to be honest. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I've met secure people who they are a rare breed. I don't know, where are they? Because I'm trying to find. And that's why
probably riding a unicorn, probably. I'd imagine, because it's about as likely to see a unicorn as you are to see one of those. But let's go with that.
But generally, it's secure attachment isn't about, it's about that they've witnessed fighting fair. Actually, they've witnessed disagreements happen and reconnection happen in healthy ways. And that's the difference, isn't it? That's what makes a healthy, secure. But I think I looked up, and I'm really terrible with figures and statistics and remembering them, but I think only about 25% of the world's population, how they've done this study, I don't know, but are secure. And the rest of us are all
We're all
the other
lunatics.
bits.
We're all mad. Like, it's fine. I know where I sit.
This is it. Well, I swing between, yeah, definitely. I always bordered on the anxious attachment, which with an anxious attachment, you're constantly obsessing about the other person. You've watched everything that they do and you read into everything. And when they pull away, it creates this absolute internal storm within yourself. And
It's all your
you
fault. It must be something you're doing. All them
right,
sort of things.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and then you can then act. Well, for me, I definitely acted in ways that would be perceived as being desperate and needy, and that all then feeds into the story. And quite often it's someone who has a predominant anxious attachment tends to be quite attracted to an avoidant, which is a recipe for, it's not to say that they can't work. It depends on the varying degrees. And again, it depends on how much people are prepared to work and grow, because I do think that we can foster more secure attachment within ourselves, and we can foster a secure relationship, even if people do have those two opposing attachment styles. But both people have to be willing to, like, that really takes work, right?
And that is exactly right. And it goes back full circle to what we were talking about near the beginning. There has to be a willingness on both sides to see those differences as differences and not flaws. It's like, yes, you might have been used to something else, because every relationship we have teaches us something, every single one of it. And when we go through life with those lessons, we try to apply them to the next person, but no person's the same. Yeah, but they've got blue eyes and brown hair. Yeah, doesn't mean they're the same, mate. It's like, doesn't mean that at all. Like, so, but I mean, yeah, thank you for explaining that, and you explained it brilliantly. I hope that's helpful for everybody, because I think there's often a lot of confusion and misconceptions, and you nailed one of them there. Is that secure attachment doesn't necessarily mean everything's gone right for you. It means that you've witnessed lots of different things and that have been dealt with in the best way that is possible. Now, that doesn't mean that you're always going to have the option to take the best solution, because that's not how life is. But sometimes you just got to kind of do what you can, do your best, and work through it. People get hurt, people make mistakes. We're all human,
Mm-hmm. And my sons have both grown up with just me as the parent, and if you look at that on paper, that you'd say then they've definitely not got secure attachment style. But because I have tried to be very emotionally present for them as much as I physically possibly can with navigating my own stuff, but have always held space for their emotions, for them to express when I've fallen short and when I've hurt them, and made amends for that. And they've seen that I've tried to heal my own stuff and given validation to their own emotions. Through that, I can see that I've fostered, they may have little bits of tendencies of the other ones, because I can't help that life has turned out the way that it has, and their fathers haven't been present, and I've gone through my own unhealthy relationships. But in me developing a secure relationship with myself, it has then fostered secure attachment within them.
It has to. I mean, we're all on a spectrum of neurosis, aren't we? We're all there. All of us are. And it's like, show me the one that seems all together. I'd like to see when no one's around, please, because I don't believe you. I don't believe you at all. So what we'll do is we'll move on to the next question. Thank you for that. It was a really great explanation. What's something about relationships that you wish everybody knew?
That's I think I always have to come back to the relationship that you have with yourself. Like, it took me years to learn this. The relationship you have with yourself will determine the healthiness of the relationship that you have with everything and everyone else going. Like, I always come back to that truth, because when I've really, that was one penny that dropped and I've never lost it again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It dropped so deeply internally in me. It was like, that is one profound truth that I absolutely know. And I see it play out when the relationship with myself or the inner critic gets louder. It affects and impacts everything else in my life. My relationship with my sons, my relationships with my work and my business, my relationship with my friends, my family, everything, food, like all of it is affected. So working on that is probably one of the biggest gifts that you can give yourself and whoever you choose to do relationship with.
I look at it like everything that happens, we try to make meaning out of it. And then we try to apply that meaning to what does it mean to me? You know, as in, how does that impact me? How does that affect me? You know, and how is it going to change me? Because we're all, like, people talk about narcissism, we're all, to a degree, we have to be narcissists to survive to a degree. Otherwise, if we just didn't care about ourselves, we'd just wander around in traffic, wouldn't we?
100%.
You know?
Again, it's a spectrum. 100%.
Yeah.
We all have to have, that level of thinking about ourselves.
Yeah. So when you say, like, the relationship with yourself, like, what would you say would be a red flag for someone listening that you need to work on your relationship with yourself?
I'd say that, do you find it hard asserting boundaries? Do you find it hard speaking your truth? Do you find you overextend yourself and overgive at the detriment to yourself? Is your self-talk very critical? Do you use lots of different things to try and avoid how you feel, whether that be sex, shopping, foods, over exercising, plastic surgery? Like, do you overuse anything to avoid what's going on internally? So I would say a lot of them look at the quality of the relationships that you have around you in your life. What are they saying to you in terms of, is there lots of drama or toxic dynamics, or you're not feeling safe, or all of those are massive indicators that there's probably like the not greatest relationship that you've got going on with yourself.
I love that explanation. Do you think another way to say it as well could be like your relationship with what's true, the truth about yourself? Because I think sometimes we create these narratives that, you know, we don't quite like the way the truth seems, so we might just change it a little bit so that we can accept it and feel a little bit more secure. But in doing that, we have literally bought into a version of the world that's just not true. It's not real. You know,
right? 100%. A big part of the work I do, it leans over to it, like inner child shadow work, whatever you want to call it, but it's accepting all of those failings and flaws that you have. Whereas an unhealthy relationship with yourself has such harsh judgment for the fact that you have these shortfallings, or that you do have dark thoughts. So, some of the things that have gone through my head at different points are dark and wicked. And I used to feel so traumatized by that. I would judge myself so harshly. I remember having so clearly one day, I drove past someone, and they weren't in a good way, and I'd seen them, I'd known of them. My head thought just this really like dark, unkind thought, because I thought that my thoughts were me and I attached to them so deeply. I went home and I literally cried for about 4 hours straight because I felt like such a wretched person. And now, like, because I've learned to accept all the flaws and embrace them and work them, and it is an ongoing process. That is an ongoing journey, but I don't it doesn't become traumatic for me when those things come up or present themselves, or and I think the more that you can learn to accept those parts of yourself, and not think that everything needs fixing. I've got to fix it and get rid of that, and then I'll be okay. And I spent years, I mean years, trying to chase that, trying to get rid of these bits in me that I've just had to accept. They exist, they are part of me, and I can just witness them, and it's just as long as they don't drive you. And that's what the relationship with yourself and working on that helps change, is you can be more compassionate with those things, you can accept those things, but you don't allow them to drive your choices, right?
Yeah, and that's it. That's exactly it. About avoiding what's real, you know, trying to pretend that something's okay when it's not, trying to pretend that it'll work out at the end as a way of avoiding the really difficult conversation or the difficult situation that you've got to navigate. And I'm also curious, how were your dark thoughts when you were trying to get into this interview? You know, because
No, actually,
death
I
upon
think
me.
no, because I'd gone for my nature walk and really grounded myself. That's why that stuff, I'm so big on it, because I probably would have got really like emotionally irate, but I didn't. It was cool. I was like, oh, it'll work out. If
You
like,
were very
it's
calm when you come on. You were
so
very calm. I was like wondering what was going to happen when you come on. I was sort of looking down, like worried a little bit. But no, I'm just playing. I'm just curious
but
to see.
but that does highlight the importance of the relationship with yourself. Means you also have to learn to prioritize self-care, which quite often, if you have a poor relationship with yourself, self-neglect is high, right? And prioritizing that means going against the grain, because there's a part of me that's like, you've got to do, because you've got to prove that you're enough, and prove that you're successful, and prove that you're worthy, and blah, 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 blah. And that can still be a running part of me, and going against the grain of that is going, no, I can feel what my nervous system needs some time out. I'm going to give it to myself. I'm going to ground myself. Then you're able to deal with things a lot better. But we
Yeah.
neglect that stuff so much. So I'd say, yeah, that's highlights another way you can realize whether the relationship with yourself is out of kilter, or is if there's high levels of self-neglect.
And I think there's quite a connection, I find, to perfectionism as well, you know, and that fear of failure or fear of success, whichever, you know, I'm fear of failing. If I fail, everyone's going to think I'm this. If I succeed, I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. I've got imposter syndrome. You can't win, you know. It's all
I
there.
know.
It's
That's
all
why I
there.
talk about sometimes just wanting to go and live in the rainforest. Just pack everything up and go to the Amazonian and become a tribe member.
I'm going to watch your Instagram and just watch it slowly change. If I see lots of leafy backgrounds, I'll be like, she's done it. She's buggered off. She's gone to the rainforest. That's it. It's all over. So what's one of the most difficult things that, you know, that you're willing to talk about that you've experienced in a relationship, a real teaching moment for you, something that may have taken a long time, but over reflection, you've gone, okay, this is what I've taken from that situation.
I think it's really hard to pinpoint, because there has been like some real deep trauma within relationships. Like there's been physical domestic abuse. There's even been bordering on sexual abuse. There's been left completely bankrupt by someone and their finances, and left pregnant, homeless, jobless, because it all crumbled at the same time. So there's been so many. Had infidelity in bar one relationship when I was younger, in every single relationship that I've had. So I think all of it has it has come back to that teaching of there's no amount of proving that I'm worthy, and no amount of trying to love someone is ever going to make them change, ever going to make them change. And you have to love someone exactly who they are, or choose not to love them at all. Because you don't know which way they're going to heal, grow, and change. And if that is having such a detriment to your own well-being, then learn to walk away. And I think I've learned I've learned that being single does not mean I haven't been chosen or I'm not good enough. I think that that's what the deepest lesson I've learned in the past 6 years. And it's been painful at times. It's been raw. I've had to grieve and cry and scream and just deep grief,
Yeah.
and going through a process of accepting and then realizing that I don't have to be chosen by someone to be worthy, to
Oh,
be enough. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I
that
mean,
would be it.
is there one common emotion that you've experienced throughout all of those different things that you've had to experience? Is there one common emotion that comes up that you feel that maybe you've had to deal with your relationship with that emotion and how you might react? Because obviously early on, you'll get your reactions are taught to you, aren't they? And,
Yeah.
validated through whatever source. Is there one emotion that's come up, do you think?
Um, I'd say that the two that I've wrestled with over the years and then had to really go on a journey of accepting is the deep rage and deep grief, like uncontrollable deep grief, because they both felt so ugly to me, right? They both
Yeah, it's
felt so
scary.
shameful and scary, like
Yeah.
really scared to feel them, because that fear of, if I feel these things and I really allow myself to tap, like, where is that going to take me and will I ever come out? Right.
Yeah.
And allowing myself to accept those parts of me and accept them to come in and pass through me. What I realize is the more you try and resist that stuff, the more sick it made me,
Oh,
both both
so true.
mentally and physically. Um, and the longer it then goes on, and I wish that I hadn't resisted that stuff as much, because it can have long-term consequences. I was diagnosed with a chronic pain condition, and it was after a car crash, but I think so much suppressed emotion and not using my voice and not speaking my truth, and trying to suppress or avoid those emotions, it takes its toll. So yeah.
People don't realize the power of emotions. I mean, maybe you'll relate to this, but I used to have an uncomfortable relationship with rage, and it wasn't until I worked out that rage is anger that's been left to come out of control, right? So
Mhm.
if rage is anger out of control, let's go back to anger. So what's the anger? Well, the anger is a reaction to something. Okay, so what's the anger a reaction to? Rejection.
Mhm.
So every time I
Yeah.
felt rejection, I went straight
Mhm.
into this reaction that then turned into anger, that's then turned into rage, and then before I know I'm doing something ridiculous, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? Luckily, at the time, I was a professional fighter, so I got to
You
got to
got
work some of that out, But and that's where I built my relationship with the gym and going to the gym. But do you feel like there was some of that for you as well? Maybe some of that left you with an emotion, say like rejection or resentment or
Yeah,
something like that.
so huge ones are abandonment, all perceived abandonment, perceived rejection, and
Mm.
perceived that I'm not being heard or validated and unseen. They are some of my biggest core triggers, and any behavior that I see that is a reflection of that, in the past has brought up like really intense reactions, definitely linked to my hormones. And there's
Well,
definitely been some
yeah,
plates smashed and coffee up the wall.
yeah,
Yeah, and it is when you track it back. I think something that's been like definitely an ongoing journey over the years of me trying to find that place of practicing the pause, right? So to find other ways. So yes, absolutely. Going to the gym and getting some of that built up tension for me, doing dance and stuff like that can be a really
yeah. I
good
love that.
release. So yeah, massively. But
We
learning
saw
to
you dance on
practice
the
that.
telly. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Saw it all. It was so good.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, I love it. It's a great way to express yourself and release enough emotion. I do a bit of somatic dance, like even at home by
Oh,
myself,
that
just to
body work though,
dis.
the people don't realize that body
Yes,
work, man. If you want to get
it's
rid of that tension,
huge.
you can talk your emotions all day long, but rarely does that talking come with resolution. The resolution can come
Right,
from getting it out, and that's what I mean. When I was a younger,
100%.
and I had that rage, getting in the ring and fighting, or going to the gym and working it out, and doing
Yeah,
PBs and all that sort of stuff, But
yeah,
I love the word that you put in front of that, which was perceived. And
mm,
again, it's that perception of like, oh, I've made a meaning from this, that I was rejected, that must mean I feel rejected, and that must mean this, and before you know it, you're all the way over here, you've grown the spiral and you've made it this big catastrophization, when
yeah,
actually it just didn't work out. And this is why it's
yeah,
so beautiful to hear you say at the beginning, it just didn't work out. It
yeah,
just didn't work out. And
yeah.
I recognize you have to deal with that in a tactful way because you're in the public eye. But that is essentially what you're saying. Whereas before it might have been, oh, what does this mean about me? Maybe I'm flawed, maybe I'm wrong. Here I am again, back where I was, and all that sort of stuff. And you're
Right.
not there now. It's beautiful to
I'm not
see.
there. And I'm not saying that those thoughts didn't try and come, but because I've learned to train my inner voice to um, be more compassionate, be more kind, speak more truths, and see things more clearly, I don't attach to that stuff coming up in the same way. Doesn't mean that it won't provoke emotion at times. I've definitely allowed myself to feel it a little bit at times and grieve it a little bit and then go, come on, Nat, we know the truth. Whereas before, that stuff would devastate me. And if I look back at all the other relationships, okay, you could say I was abandoned, you could say I was rejected, that if you look at it in the cold hard truth, yes, that those things were. But is it because I wasn't enough? Is it because I wasn't lovable enough? Is it because that person wanted to, or did they not have the capacity, because they can only love me as deeply as they love or have met themselves? So it that's why I say perceived, because people are just doing things from their own
Mm,
um, wounds and stuff. They're not to me, right?
mm, mm.
They're just acting themselves and doing themselves, and not everything, as eccentric as I can be at times.
Yeah.
Not everything is about me,
No,
right?
but
Not
if you're wearing green glasses, everything looks green. And it's just like, so it is, so
Mhm.
it's about trying to put someone else's glasses on and see things from their perspective, and some people don't do that because they're scared of what they might learn, you know
Yeah,
and that's not on you. That's not on you.
yeah.
Maybe something's going on with you that's calling somebody to be a certain way, or to be better, or to improve, or to change, and they just don't want to, and that's
Hmm.
okay. But don't drag
Yeah,
me through the mud while you're doing it, you know what I mean?
that's what the healing journey has done, is allowed me to know that I have a choice. I think a
Yeah.
lot of what I did was just so unconscious, running from my subconscious, and just driven by that, and driven by those stories that I held so tightly to. And I actually have a choice to get out of the arena or leave the table when love is no longer being served. All of those quotes that you hear, but that is
Yeah.
exactly what it's allowed me to do. Is
Yeah.
I can't say don't drag me through it. You can't drag me through it if I don't allow you, because yeah,
That's it. That's the bit. That's the accountability bit. It's taking
oh
back your power,
yeah,
and that's what I respect so much about you. Is that not only have you really done that work, because there's a lot of people that say they have, and then you see something, and you go, I'm not, don't believe you, but
yeah,
you've done that work, but you're also sharing it too, which is another extra vulnerability that most wouldn't, and I really admire that about you. And
thank you.
I've there's been a lot you've said here. That relationship with yourself, that relationship with what's true, acceptance, accepting what you can't control, and recognizing that it's not you, it's them, maybe, and then that you need to work it through, and it's not an accusation. It's
And sometimes it is you as well. Sometimes,
yeah,
I had some toxic stuff that I needed to work on too. I
of
like
course.
an ongoing journey. So it's not always about, yeah. And I think that when we sit in blaming others And sometimes stuff that happens, it is crap. There's no taking away from it. It's crap how they behaved, how they treated. Like, that stuff hurts, and it's okay to grieve and wrestle with forgiving or not wanting to forgive at all, or it, like, that stuff is okay. But the longer I feel that you stay in the blame game, it keeps you locked in a prison where those people are continuing to have an impact on your life now, and they're no longer in it, right? So
it's absolutely right, and it's just great to hear you say all that, and and I think it has a lot of power coming from you. Definitely, I could say that all day long, but I don't think anyone would believe me. So there it is. But thank you so much for today. I've loved talking to you. I've loved listening to you, and
always.
Is there anything that you'd like to pass on to anybody that's listening that you feel would help them with their self-development?
Surround yourself with find your tribe, because the journey of trying to do it all by yourself is painful and lonely, and we need to know that there's other people with our type of crazy. Do you know what I mean? That shared experience of knowing that you're not alone, and knowing that your thoughts, your feelings, and how you deal with it, like, you're not mad. Because I think doing the journey by yourself, it's a very lonely one, and iron sharpens iron, right? So I think when we're around other people and we find our tribe, there's something so beautiful in that. And I wouldn't be where I am today without people in my life who encourage, inspire, and get me where I can be my true authentic self with. So
which is the only way to live your life and be well, I think. And I love the fact that by pointing that out, what you're also pointing out is just because you're single doesn't mean you're alone, and that you've still got your people, and they're people that you choose. And I think people, like you said at the beginning, right, become full circle. If you stay in that relationship that's not working, you will be unhappy. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Where can people find you, and is there anything you want to point to, anything you want to bring to people's awareness that you're doing?
So Instagram tends to be my home. That's like the place that I feel most comfortable. So you can find me on there. I am Natalie Russell. I got my website. I also have with the lovely Dominic, who I think that's how we got to know each other. We host retreats together, and we run a monthly online free group for women to get together, and we have a free Facebook group called Finding Freedom. It's just for women who are on the healing journey, and then I do one-to-one coaching.
Thank you for this. I've loved it. Sorry I put you through hell. I hope that we're still friends after this.
Thank you so much. No, you're all good. You're good. You're safe.